Coming up next is a gentleman whose passive income now exceeds $300,000 a year. And by the way, this is according to him.
Is it really passive though? Or is it like work that he's calling passive?
Well, and that's the interesting thing, because this gentleman courts controversy whenever he says things like that. His name is Sam Dogen. He's the founder of Financial Samurai in 2009, one of the most read personal finance blogs. And also he tends to court controversy, it seems like, wherever he goes. He's got a brand new book out, though. Sam and I have known each other for a long time. And actually, Sam helped us, OG, in the early days of Stacking Benjamins, get this show off the ground. But Sam is never one to shy away from a discussion or a pot-stirring comment. And by the way, for me, that is part of what makes personal finance fun, is the fact that people think it's boring. This is a guy that never makes it boring. Sam Dogen coming down to the basement. And I haven't talked to this guy in forever, although I read his work all the time. Mr. Financial Samurai, Sam Dogen's here. How are you, man?
Hey, Joe. Good seeing you. Haven't talked to you maybe in a decade.
The last time you and I saw each other, which was also the first time we saw each other, and you, by the way, built this great network of bloggers that I'm forever grateful to, because I got to network with a bunch of cool people and work with them. But you and I in Denver with a guy named Dr. Dean, who used to contribute to the show back in the early days. We went to this steakhouse, and I don't know if you remember this, but we sat right across from Al Michaels and
That's right. Monday Night Football.
We did, yes, and the guy Bob Costas.
Oh, Bob Costas.
It was Al Michaels and Bob Costas.
Oh, thanks for that
crazy
memory. And you know, yes. Dr. Dean is big time now, right?
Yes, he puts us to shame as a Georgia state legislator.
I mean,
for all this time.
Like he's a senator. I mean, we're attracting big time people.
I know. How about that? Well, I always thought it was amazing when, when Bob Costas came over and he wanted your autograph. That was
right.
Big.
He was like, can you pick up the bill or something?
I want to ask you, let's start here on the topic of financial independence, Sam, because I feel like reading the introduction to your book, and actually when you and I talked before, that you latching on to financial independence really was born out of your time at Goldman Sachs. Would you say that's true? And could you tell us a little bit about your time at Goldman Sachs?
Well, I joined Goldman in 1999 after going through literally 55 or more interviews over 6-7 rounds. And it was so painful. And I thought I finally landed my dream job, a front office job at Goldman Sachs in New York City. What's better than that? And my first salary was $40,000. And I thought, wait, that's it? I couldn't even rent an apartment on my own. So I needed a co-signer and I needed a roommate for my studio. And then they made me get in at 5:30 in the morning when it was pitch black. And then they made me stay after 7 p.m. when it was dark because I had to connect with my colleagues in Asia. And so pretty soon, literally within the first week, I was thinking to myself, there is no way I'm going to be able to last in this industry and environment like my parents did with their government jobs for 30, 40 years. So I need to save and figure out a way to get out.
You created an 18-year plan. Was that the original plan?
Well, I told myself, okay, what's a reasonable plan? I went to school for 13 years. I better work for at least 13 years. Okay, age 40, that sounds like a good age to exit 18 years after joining the workforce. So let me think if I can save and invest that amount of time, extrapolate out the returns. Oh, okay, maybe I'll be able to leave and then just do what I want.
So you put this plan together.
Yeah.
How did it work?
Well, so the plan worked well because of the pain I experienced every single day going to work. I dropped calculus in college at 8 a.m. because it was too early. So for me to have to go into work at 5:30 a.m. under the fluorescent bright lights was like torture. It was really like torture.
So you said it worked. You're saying it worked because you were so damn diligent about it. Like every day you're like, screw this. I am making this plan work.
I mean, all the pain, the more pain I got, the more yelling I got and the more stress I felt. I was like, okay, I just got to save more and more. Every single dollar I saved was like, a little bit closer to that freedom that I might experience one day. So I really had to keep the faith. And, it's just really stressful. And that's the irony of having a bad job right out of college, or just a bad job in general. It forces you to think about your future more. It forces you to forecast when you'll be so miserable that you just can't continue and that you need a backup plan.
Well, and I love this idea of getting out of the bad job. And you say something very early in your book that I want to focus on. You draw this difference between not losing and winning, right? That there's really two different types of strategies. And obviously, and by this, not that, you want to talk about winning. But tell me about the difference between these two things, because not losing really is still not winning.
Well, I play a lot of tennis. And so what happens in any kind of competitive sport, if you're ahead, you might start playing more defensively. You might not play not to lose instead of play to win. So play not to lose is to play defense and to just take less risk, because you don't want to blow it. But then oftentimes when you play not to lose, you end up choking and you end up losing it anyway. So if you play to win, it's an aggressive mindset. So it's kind of like with buy this, not that. Defense in terms of money is saving and budgeting and making sure all that is down pat correct. The offense, the playing to win, is really focusing on the income, whether it's getting a promotion or getting paid at work, job hopping to a better opportunity, going to a different city, developing side hustles, or starting your business on the side on the weekends.
And it's difficult to do that, to play to win, when you haven't built the foundation.
Yeah, that's true. We've all got to build that foundation. We focus and build that foundation until it's autopilot. We all know, pay yourself first, max out or try to contribute as much as possible to your tax advantage retirement accounts. Get that stuff down pat. Whether it takes 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, once that's on an autopilot, then worst case scenario, you've got that down, but you can play to win and go offensive.
You crack me up at the beginning of your book, because you're like, I've never met a spreadsheet that I didn't love. So clearly my type of person. But you analyze all of these different pieces. Buy this thing, not that. Do this and not that. But you started off with this whole mindset idea and get very analytical about the steps that you need in your mindset and the steps to go through your mindset. And it all starts with something that you call the 70-30 philosophy. Yes. Can you dive into what that is for us?
So one of the core principles of buy this, not that is to encourage people to think in probabilities, not absolutes. If you start thinking you need 100% certainty to make a decision, you're going to miss out on so many opportunities, right? You're going to miss out on, the girl that you liked in high school that you wanted to ask out, but you were too chicken to ask out because you don't want to get rejected because you weren't sure. So you end up never asking them out. And then 10 years later, you see them at the coffee shop and you say, oh, hi, do you remember me from high school? And you admit to her, oh, I used to like you a lot. I had a crush on you. And then she says, you know what? I had a crush on you too. Why didn't you ask me out? And then you're like, oh, we missed out on 10 years of love and romance. So
how many times have you heard that story, by the way? You hear that story all the time.
All the time. And it's like sitting in front of the classroom. You don't want to raise your hand and ask and ask a teacher a question because you're afraid people think you're a dumbass, right? But I say go for it. Ask that question because I'm sure other people have those same questions as well. So back to your question on what is the 70-30 decision-making framework and philosophy. That is, basically, if you have if you believe with a 70% conviction rate that there is a 70% plus probability you're making the right choice, go for it. While having the humility and understanding that, 20, 30% of the time you're going to get it wrong. But unless it's a disaster, like you're never coming back because you're dead or something, you're going to learn from your mistakes and get better and make better decisions over time.
As I read you talking about that, I thought about something a mentor of mine said, which totally aligns with this. And I love adding the 70-30 idea to this principle that I already had, which is Also, contemplate what your downside is. Like if you ask her out and she says no, well, dude, you're already at no. You know what I mean?
Right.
You're already there. So
Right.
clearly, what is the downside? If she doesn't like you, she already isn't dating you. So who cares?
Exactly.
Like, just go do it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like both of those things. But I love the 70 because it pushes you even more. Like it pushes you because you make a big point of this all the way through the book, Sam, that it's really about action. It's not about what you know. It's about getting enough information to get off your butt and do it.
Yeah, you got to do it. You can think all day. You can have all these ideas, but if you never take action, nothing good or bad is ever going to happen. And I firmly believe at my age now, at 45, the fear in your head is often way worse than the reality. So if I were to tell myself, go back to my 22-year-old self, I would say take more risk, be bolder. Don't worry about other people's criticism and that fear. Things will probably be okay 70+% of the time.
Yeah. And if they're not, it's usually not irrevocable, right?
Right.
Go ahead and make the mistake and you'll learn from
Right.
it. And yeah.
Better
and
to make the mistakes when you're young too.
Absolutely. And why is it that whenever I meet 20-year-olds, they're always the people that are most afraid of making a mistake? Like, I feel like I'm way less afraid at 54, Sam, now making a mistake than I did that. And part of that, by the way, is that now I have a cushion, right? If I make a mistake, I'm going to be okay. Maybe it's that. But still, I think, man, if I could have been more aggressive with my investments, if I would have been way more aggressive, I would have gotten so much further ahead, would have made the mistakes earlier.
Yeah. I mean, wisdom and experience, they're priceless. And that's why if you ever find yourself saying, if I knew then what I know now, things would be much better. To cure that saying, to never say that again, is to simply latch on to a mentor, listen to people who've been there before, read a great book, listen to the Stacking Benjamins podcast, listen to people who have that wisdom and experience, because they will help you avoid those landmines.
I was going to say, go read Financial Samurai. Damn it. That's what we need to do. Read By This, Not That. But this leads, so these are like dominoes. So the 70-30 philosophy then leads us into your happiness equation, which is really where you start the book, is on your happiness equation. Yes. Let's talk about the happiness equation for a second. What does that mean?
So happiness, I got two definitions. One definition of happiness is progress. So making progress in whatever you want to do, whether it's your relationship, your career, your money. That's my one-word definition of happiness. The happiness equation is simply reality minus expectations. And I have found that as someone, who grew up in a middle-class household, I went to state school, and I had low expectations, frankly. I was like, I don't have a high SAT score. I don't have 3.940 GPA. I'm going to go to a state school. It cost $2,800 a year back in 1995. That's the College of William and Mary. If I graduate with no job, which a lot of people don't graduate with a job, I could return to my McDonald's job, getting yelled at by a power tripping manager for $4 an hour, and I could pay my parents back that tuition within 6 months. And so my expectations were low. And so the reality was I found a job in New York City at a great firm, and I was ecstatic. I was so ecstatic. And I've held that happiness equation for my entire life. It's because I have low expectations of myself.
But I like that, and I want to stop here for a second and make sure that all the stackers in our community get this. It's not about the outcome as much as it's about progress, right? Because I feel like too many of us are outcome based, and we will do the right things. Back to your 70-30, Sam, as you already well know, we'll do the right things and get the wrong outcome, and we'll stop doing the right things.
Yes.
Like, we can't do that.
Yes. I mean, let me tell you folks a story. I think I spoke to you. When did you start Stacking Benjamins?
Man, I don't even think we'd started Stacking Benjamins when you and I were at that dinner. I think that was just a gleam in our eye. I think it was, so it would have been 2012.
Right. So 10 years ago, I remember speaking to you for an interview. We did an interview 10 years ago. And I don't know if you remember this, but we talked, I think it was about an hour. And for some reason, the recording was bad. So you asked me back then, 10 years ago, can we do it again? And for some reason, I was like, I don't have time, because we spent an hour, and I think you called me when I was in the bathtub, and I was like,
you were in a hot tub.
Yeah.
You were in a hot tub.
Yeah. And I was like all stressed and everything. And then I was like, I can't do it again. Maybe later. And so I messed that up because I didn't help you re-record that episode for you. But 10 years later, you consistently recorded over and over again amazing episodes. Look at how many reviews you have. Your podcast is one of the great success stories because you kept showing up and you kept recording. You could have been like, man, this is too hard. I had a guest and we have to redo it again. What a pain in the ass, but you kept going. And because of your progress, you have created one of the best personal finance podcasts around.
Dude, stop. Keep going. Stop. Keep going. Stop.
No, and okay, I will keep going. And so I was afraid. I was worried about asking. I was like, you know what? Can I ask Joe to come on? I kind of didn't really do a great job for him 10 years ago. And, but I said, I'm going to ask because I know Joe's a good guy. And thanks so much for having me.
Well, but I definitely want to talk to, you because it's kind of where our community is really small and it is about where the river runs. And it's funny, there is, as you are not only a very influential person in this space, but you occupy a big mind share for a lot of people. And man, and my friend Doc G's forum, when he just showed a picture reading your book, like the discussions that people have around it. And I actually want to get to that later because I actually want to talk about the book first, and then we'll talk about, controversial stuff, and maybe you can help me with some of that. But what I really want to go into is, you say from this happiness equation that we need a net worth that we can shoot for, right?
Yeah.
We need a net worth number that we can shoot for. I love this idea of shooting for a net worth number, but is there an easy way that you come up with that? Or do we do like, I've suggested in the past, which is just do a little bit of work to create your plan?
Well, I don't know if we all know, but there's the 4% rule, right? And that the inverse of the 4% rule is 25 times your expenses. And I am not a believer in the 4% rule. One, because I have lived without a paycheck since 2012. And to me, it's too aggressive. But two, the other reason why is 4% rule was created in the 1990s. When the risk-free rate, the 10-year bond yield, was between 5 to 6%. So of course, you could spend and withdraw down 4% of your portfolio when you can earn a risk-free 5 to 6%. You don't need a PhD to come up with that math. And so times have changed, right, over the past 30 years. And because times have changed, our approach to finances have changed, and we should change with it, right? We're not robots. We look at what's going out there. The corrections are more violent. Hopefully the bull markets are longer. The future returns might be lower. These are all things we have to take into consideration now here in 2022 versus in the 1990s. And so I like to look at a multiple of gross average income instead of expenses. And the reason why is because if you use a multiple of expenses to come up with a net worth target, you can cheat. You can just say, I'm going to start eating rice and beans every day to get to financial independence. Whereas if you use a multiple of income, you can never cheat. You always have to be saving and focusing as your income grows, which is what most of us do, right? Over our careers, our income grows. So as you use a multiple of income, then your savings and investing will grow too. And my minimum target is 10x income, but my ultimate target is 20x income for a net worth.
And I love this for all the money nerds out there, because the only person, when you say cheat, Sam, the only person you're cheating is you, right? Because if you say that I'm done and then the market does what it's done this year, well, you just screwed yourself. That's all you did.
I mean, so only really you know what you need, and you have to be true to yourself in terms of what your financial independence number is. My definition of financial independence is when you have enough passive or semi-passive investment income or royalty income to cover your basic living expenses, right? So we can come up with different FIRE terms all we want to make ourselves feel better and fit our situation, because that's what we do, right? We need to make ourselves feel better to give ourselves the motivation to continue. But you got to be true to yourself. You yourself know the real number.
Yeah, these FIRE firms or terms drive me crazy anyway. Like fat fire, lean fire. Let's just avoid a dumpster fire. That's
exactly.
That's what I think you and I want. I want to back up on something you said earlier because you were talking about risk-free income, and you have a little inset in your book about one metric that you've looked at for a long period of time.
Yes.
Which is the 10-year Treasury.
Yes.
And you say that you really focus on this one thing.
Yes.
Can you explain to us why you focus so much on the 10-year?
Yes. So if there's one data point, economic number to focus on, it's the 10-year bond yield. So the 10-year Treasury has a yield, and it is the risk-free rate of return. So if you invest in a 10-year Treasury bond, you will get that yield every single year and all your principal back after 10 years. And it's risk-free because it is issued by the U.S. government, and the U.S. government is sovereign, right? If we don't believe in the U.S. government, then we don't believe in anything, right? And so the risk-free rate of return will tell you many things. One, it will tell you expectations about inflation. So if the yield is going up, inflation expectations are probably going up. If the yield is going down, inflation expectations are going down. The 10-year yield is also a metric to use for investors. So you wouldn't invest in anything, whether it's real estate or stocks, if you cannot return greater than the 10-year bond yield, the risk-free rate of return, right? So you basically can figure out your equity risk premium. So let's say the 10-year bond yield is at 3%. That's risk-free number. What do you require? What kind of premium do you require over 3% to invest in stocks, to invest in real estate, to invest in anything? And if that premium is at 0, you're not going to bother investing in anything. So it's a complicated number that encapsulates economics, expectations, inflation, unemployment, future returns, everything. And that is the one number I hope everybody follows and studies over the long term.
Yeah, it seems like just a very nice shortcut for us, right? Instead of focusing on all these things, if it's encapsulated in this one marketplace, I get all this data at once. And it also seems to go very nicely, Sam, with your 70-30 rule, right? Where you know what, based on this number, if I'm evaluating an investment, this will tell me the likelihood that this is worth investing in or not, and gives me some leverage.
Yes, it's for example, let's say, so this year in 2022, the 10-year bond yield peaked at 3.48%. And that's up about 2% from the beginning of the year. And that was because inflation expectations were huge. And then people expected the Federal Reserve to hike Fed funds rate to 3.5%. And everybody was freaking out. But then you see the June inflation numbers come out, and the July numbers will come out, and they're rolling over all the data points. And then those expectations go down. And then you see risk assets start gaining a bid because, finally, our expectations for ever rising inflation is getting moderated now. So we can better model returns and earnings expectations and so forth. So it is a really important number, and it's a fundamental number for people trying to achieve financial independence and trying to retire early and figure out their safe withdrawal rate as well.
I don't know that I like the word hack, but that's a great hack. I mean, that is a fantastic hack. There's one more from early in the book that I'd like you also to explain to people, because this is an amazing thing to do, because it's mostly about behavior. You talk about tethering income and your investments. Mm-hmm. If you can explain this to people, this is another powerful thing, Sam, because I feel like it helps you stick with the plan, right? When you do this tethering thing. Explain this idea.
Well, so to build enough passive income, you got to build a taxable investment portfolio or a rental property portfolio. This is money outside of your tax advantaged accounts. So it's already hard enough for, some people to max out their 401k or do the IRA and all that. But to go a step beyond and try to build a taxable portfolio that's 1x, 2x, 3x greater than your tax advantage accounts, it's very difficult. And some people, because of the difficulty, won't bother to start. And so if you tether your investments to something that matters, small things, then it becomes easier. So for example, you can tether your investment in the S&P 500, like an SPY index ETF, to paying for your daily coffee habit of $3, right? And the $3 a day, maybe that's $1,000 a year. And you try to figure out, how much do I need to invest to generate $1,000 a year at a 4% rate of return? So you take 1,000 divided by 4%, and you come up with that target amount to invest in. So if you tether all those little things that you enjoy doing in your life, pretty soon you'll get to a bigger thing. Maybe the biggest challenge will be tethering what investment that'll pay for your mortgage, and then what investment will pay for your child's education, and what investment will pay for your Hawaii trip around the world or whatever. And you just keep on going, and that keeps you motivated.
And I love it, because staying motivated, especially in down markets like now, like you see so many people, Robinhood's laying off a bunch of people. Why? Because nobody's trading right now. Hopefully that's good. But you and I, you've been in this game as long as I have. It generally isn't good. I mean, the average person is not trading, not because they're smart, but because we always do the wrong stuff, and we just, oh man.
Please don't trade, folks. I mean, after a year of trading, you're going to calculate all your wins and losses, and you'll be like, that's it? You could have spent that time building a business, trying to get promoted, helping your colleagues. I remember I traded so much while I was working in finance that I got pulled aside by the senior managing director from New York City, and he came out and he said, "What the hell are you doing? What are you doing? Aren't you doing your job?" And the funny thing is, I ended up making maybe a couple $1,000s, but I had literally 7 figures worth of trades because I was like in and out, in and out. It was such a career limiting move, and at the end of the time, it was a waste. It was a waste of time.
Wow. Well, and also looking at your bar bill during that time too, I would think would be difficult, because after a day of trading, I just want to drink. That's all. That's all I think.
Don't day trade, folks. Just focus on the long term and asset allocate. Asset allocate, reduce stress, believe in the process.
Next time you come on, Sam, I want to talk about your views on income streams, because obviously you go into multiple income streams. You talk about everything. You uncover going into real estate. You talk about being location independent or changing your location. You talk about weddings. You go through, do this, not that, buy this, not that, in all these different areas. What do you think, though, is the one area of the book that people aren't going to talk about enough, that you wish they talked about more? Because from one author to another, I think we all have this area of the book, and you're like, damn it, there's this one part of the book that I wish we'd focus more on that we just don't do.
Well, I am completely biased because I'm in the thick of fatherhood right now. My son is 5.5, my daughter's 2.5, and I'm 45. And so one of my biggest regrets was having children late. I had my son when I was almost 40. And so I wish someone would slap me upside the head when I was 18, 20, 30 and said, the children that come into your life will be the most valuable things you have ever. And therefore, it is better to have them sooner so that they take up a greater percentage of your remaining life than later. I wish someone told me that. And if someone did tell me that, I would have focused and planned on family planning sooner. I would have got rid of the notion that I needed, $1 million net worth before I could have my first child in San Francisco. And because a lot of us, dual income household, we're grinding away at work, we're focused on getting paid and promoted. And then we wake up one day at 35 years old, we've got this money, but our biology suddenly doesn't cooperate. I know so many couples who can't have children or have had many miscarriages. I think 15, 20% of couples have miscarriages because it's so hard the later, you try. And so that is the one thing I hope, people who don't have kids, people who have kids who want to be grandparents one day, I think this topic is the most important topic for me in my heart.
That's fabulous. As a guy who had kids at a younger age, and now my kids are 27 and I'm 54, I wholeheartedly agree with that. Because even though it was a pain in the ass and a huge struggle trying to juggle all this crap when I was young, now you reap the rewards of it.
You figured it out, right?
Yeah, well, kind of. We're still working on that every day, Sam. We just covered maybe, the first 10% of this book. The book is Buy This, Not That. It's available everywhere. It was a fantastic read. I love going through it. I want to ask you about Financial Samurai, and we kind of alluded to this earlier. So just for a second, I was talking to, Nicole Lapin.
Why am I familiar with that name?
Yeah, Nicole Lappin, Rich Bitch, and she's done quite a few financial books. She was a very young person on CNBC. Nicole had a discussion about Dave Ramsey recently, and we had her on talking about, so few people listen to financial content. Should we be at each other's throats? Should we be ripping each other? Should we hold each other accountable? You're a guy that knows, like I do, from having been a financial planner. Financial systems always have compliance, right? There really is no compliance for financial writers. I'm very curious to get your take on this. Partially, just the great dinner you and I had. You shared something with me then that I found incredibly interesting, that whenever I read Financial Samurai, I love this. You said that you will often in your head, when you're getting ready to write a piece, you will try to argue it from the position that's opposite yours. Partly so that you can see the other point of view. In fact, you talk about this early, and by this, not that, that you will evaluate the opposite opinion. You'll think about it from the opposite way. And sometimes you'll write the piece that comes from the opposite point of view. Do you rely on that a lot? Does that help you a ton to do things that way?
Absolutely. One of the biggest joys of writing and having a relatively large platform is to see different perspectives. I don't know what I don't know. And so to have an open mind is a beautiful mind, in my opinion. I grew up overseas. I was born in Manila, Philippines. My parents were in the U.S. Foreign Service. So I lived in Zambia, Malaysia, Taiwan.
So you lived everywhere.
I've lived everywhere. I was in China for 6 months, India. And every time I speak to someone from a different culture, speaks a different language, or I go to a different country, I learn something new. And I think, I never thought about that before. So since an early age, I have been pretty open to the way other people see things. So I don't get mad. Like, in United States politics, people seem to be raging. Half the country's this, half the country's this. And I'm like, actually, I see your point of view and why is your point of view any less than mine? We're both patriots. We both want what's best for the country. I see your point of view. And so that's what I want with Financial Samurai and with Buy This, Not That. For people to come together more and see other people's points of view. A lot of people, have been upset with some of my writing because I talk about, let's say, you need $300,000 to live a middle-class lifestyle in San Francisco or New York City. And so that pissed so many people off. But that piece, Sam, we did a show where our headline, we went over that. Everybody went over that particular piece. Yeah. And I remember that was the talk. Like everybody's like, no way, these numbers are made up. This is crap. This is whatever. Yeah. But it's not made up. I mean, I literally spent hours detailing the budget and say, this is the budget. These are the tax rates. This is what you can buy with, the median home price is, 1.5 million. This is what it is. Please focus on not just the cost, but also the income generation potential. So I do love a good debate that's professional, that's respectful, that people can see the other side and not just say, you dumbass, blah. But you can call me a dumbass, that's fine. But please back it up with some of your reasonings why. And with the internet, everybody's like, they're much more aggressive, and it is what it is. I understand. I've been around since 2009, and so have you. But I enjoy the debate because I always learn something. I always have this aha moment. Oh, I never thought about that before. Thank you for sharing.
Well, and that's why when I was reading some of the controversy around you on Doc G's group, it was the back and forth was fantastic. I love people talking about stuff. I love them sharing opinions. I also didn't like the fact that some of the people were like, no, don't let Sam share his opinion. Let's throttle it. Let's not give him anything. But one guy, William McVeigh, and I want to ask you about this. He is a online moderator for a fire publication called Choose FI. He says, there are posts of his being you, that I disagree with him based on his analysis and conclusions. I'm 100% comfortable with an author or podcaster challenging my belief, but that's not why he has such a bad reputation within the community. Meaning, by the way, to people that know nothing about this little stupid spat that we're talking about in the little tiny community, not the bigger community I think that we are trying to envelop here, but in the little uber nerd community of creators. It's not because he has a different conclusion about things. It's because he unabashedly engages in troll-like behavior. Ironically, in a post he wrote about how to combat trolls and leverages his platform as a weapon to attack individuals. I just can't take him seriously while those specific articles remain published on his website. I wanted you, as a guy who I've known for a long time, just to have an opportunity to respond to that.
Yeah.
Because I feel like in the forums, I hear that side. I never get to hear Sam's side of this. So when you hear me say that, what do you think?
Well, I think one of the things is, as you grow, even if you have 1% of people who hate you, someone will always hate you, whether it's because of the way you look, your beliefs. That absolute figure also grows, even if it's just 1%. And so I don't have really time. I don't have time as a father and as a writer to actually get involved with all this stuff. But the problem is, as I grow, and if I write something that is controversial that people debate, people will hate me for it. And so one of the things that I noticed, growing up and in America, and also being part of the the personal finance community, is that it's not really diverse as I would like, based on living in New York City and San Francisco. So here in San Francisco, minorities are the majority. We're a majority minority city. There's people from all walks of life, whereas in personal finance community, it's a little bit more homogenous. And that's just the way it is. And so I've always received some type of hate, whether it's because I'm Asian. And it was really weird because I grew up in Asia when I was a kid. And then when I came to the United States, I suddenly became part of the 6% minority. So having to deal with different things was really a challenge. And I've seen that being amplified on the internet. And so, you should see a lot, or some of the comments that would be left. It's really disheartening, but I'm used to it. That's the kind of the sad thing. I grew up in Virginia. I went to William and Mary, which is Southern Virginia. But ever since I became a father in 2017, I started thinking a lot about how my children will grow up in this world. And I didn't want to step down from, that type of racism and that hateful commentary that I would get from some people. I wanted to stand up. So I always try to see a negative as something positive. So if someone is coming at me with really negative words, right, really hateful words, I'll try to use it as a commentary, or I'll try to use it as, let's see how we can turn this into a positive and create a post about it. So let's say you're an internet troll and you say, you hate Asians because of whatever thing, and you're from wherever part of the States. I'll say, okay, what is your perspective? Let me write that. And then let me write a post on how to deal with internet trolls. And then maybe it'll do well. And then maybe it'll be great, because as a writer, I like to use any type of story or situation as content to create more writing. It's life. And this is something like a teachable moment I want to teach my kids, where this is a really, really brutally competitive world with a lot of different thoughts. A lot of people will come at you. They'll hate you for who you are. You just got to keep fighting, and you got to look at the positives of the negatives. And even if you are part of the 6% minority, and even if you get 100% of your people backing you, which equals 6%, you will still lose to the majority, who is 60%. Even if the 60% only got 10.1% of support, you will still lose. So your tax as an immigrant or as a minority or someone with a disability is what it is, and you've got to figure out how to turn the negative into a positive.
I got to tell you, I'm somebody that from the beginning of working in this financial media field has thought that we need more voices. Like, people talk about, hey, what do I have? We need more voices. We need more different voices. We need, I feel bad whenever anybody says, hey, what do I have? What's my story all about? And for a while, as you remember, when heck, you've been around a lot longer than I have, Sam, the number of women that were around when you started, not that many. Mm-hmm. Number of minorities, certainly not that many. Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness. The number of of black men just still this big hole that could be filled and should be filled. Yeah. We need more people that look like the different people that make up the United States. So
yeah, one of the reasons why I decided to be more public in 2022, because I had a decision: should I go public? Should I do a video? Should I put my picture in the book? And my thought was no, because I wanted privacy. I wanted to live my life in peace. But ever since 2020 began, with all the hate crime and hate action against Asian American people in America, I was pissed off. I was like, that is not right. That is bullshit, right? That is bullshit. And the thing is, it really made me feel like, all the racism and the negativity that I have felt since 2009 really came to a head in public in 2020, 2021, and 2022. So I said, you know what? You guys didn't believe me that I was being attacked, and like all these terms come out like Karens and all that. Like, actually, this is real, folks. This is what we experience all the time. And instead of, if I want to see that change in the world, I need to be that change. I just can't complain. And one of the things I really respect about the Black community is I have a friend who played in the NBA, and I was privy to join his like a team meeting. This is with the Warriors. This is before we won the championship. They had a team meeting, and they were talking about investing and all that. And what I admired most was using their voice to stand up for their community, using their platform to say, hey, enough is enough, and to organize and stand up. And so the issue with the Asian American community, I found, is that we don't stand up for ourselves as much. And as a result, we get run over. When we talk about race issues or something, it's, white versus black. Well, what happened to the Asian folks? Or, why are we always missing? And so I hope that if I can write a positive book that can help people gain courage and get their finances right, they can say, hey, you know what? Maybe Asian people aren't so bad. Maybe, if you had any type of hate, any type of ignorance about who we are, you can say, you know what? I appreciate this culture and these people more. That's my hope. And I think about it for my children.
I'm glad you put your face out there for another reason. I thought the second I saw you, you're one handsome dude.
You gonna make me spit out my water?
I tried to do that right as you were going after the coffee. I'm like, I think I got him. Hey, I want to end this, by the way, because I've always seen you as a motivational figure in some of your controversial pieces. I know from that early conversation that you will sometimes write from the other point of view so that you can increase these conversations that we need to have, that we can stir each other up and we can start having these dialogues that we need to have. But I want to end on this because you referenced this earlier, and I think this is a phenomenal story more people need to hear about you, which is you talked about the 55 interviews, but you made a decision to go to William and Mary, as you mentioned earlier, lower cost school, close to home, a real ROI decision, still a heck of a great school, by the way, fantastic place to go. But like you said, your SATs weren't phenomenal. You said that you worry all the time, that you don't think as fast as some other people do. So I hear all that and I'm like, wow, Goldman Sachs, as you know, Sam, because you've been in that culture, best and brightest. Can you tell the story about you ending up at Goldman Sachs? Because this is just this I think will tell our audience what really, really matters at the end of the day.
So I think the story is about getting on the damn bus at 6 a.m. And so there was a career fair in Washington, D.C., about 2.5 hours north of Williamsburg, Virginia. And so I said, okay, I'm going to go on the bus. 6 a.m. I show up. I've got this really cheap suit with a tie that has a teddy bear and a balloon on it because I have to wear it because my girlfriend gave it to me, even though I guess it was not appropriate, according to these Merrill Lynch recruiters who actually told me that's inappropriate. And so I got on the bus and I was waiting on the bus for about 45 minutes. Nobody else was on the bus. And then after about an hour, the bus driver said, you know what? Screw those kids. Let's go. I said, you're going to take me on the bus? And he said, no, we're going to switch vehicles. So he took me on the bus to this shack Again, this is in Williamsburg, Virginia. And he pulled out a black Lincoln Town Car, tinted windows and everything. That's like your dream, back in 1998. And I was like, all right, I'll get in the car. And he chauffeured me 2.5 hours to the career fair in Washington, D.C. And that is when I met the recruiter. Her name was Kim Perkis. I'll forever be indebted to her. She grilled me like a sausage, kept on sizzling me, asking me about, the Federal Reserve and what I thought about this stock. And, I was like, I did my best. And I thought I did great. And she goes, okay, welcome to Super Day at Goldman Sachs at, Old Slip Plaza, whatever that address was. And then I had 12 more interviews. I said, hey, I think I did pretty well. I had met all these other candidates, who went to Ivy League schools and everything. I said, I think I might have got the job. And they said, Sam, you didn't get the job, but we'd like to invite you back again to find a home for you. And then they found, I came back 5 more times. And then one time was at the derivatives desk. And I was not a math guy. And they made me read this book called Options as a Strategic Investment by Nate McMillan. It was like a 1,000-page book. He said,
It sounds like a page turner.
Yeah.
Page turner.
They said, go home and read this and come back to us. So I read it. I read the whole damn book. It's crazy. Came back a month later, and they asked me one question from chapter 1 of the book. What is a butterfly spread? And then I was like, I know the answer. But I didn't get that job either. And I have to tell this other story because I went into the office at 7:30 a.m. up the elevator. It was a packed elevator. You're like sardines. And I was in the front like this. And then I got out as quick as I could to let everybody else out, right? I waited in this office for 30 minutes, waiting for the MD to come interview me. He came into the room. He said, hey, he looked at me straight in the eye. He said, never, ever get out of an elevator first before a woman. And then he walked away. I was like, oh, sorry, sir. And that was it. So that was one of my 55 interviews that I will never forget. So now I never, even if it's packed sardines, I will push you back and get out of the way so a lady can step out of the elevator. But anyway, long story short, which was a long story, I was able to get that job while I was traveling abroad in Japan. And it was awesome.
I just love the idea that showing up matters. And just show up.
Just show up, and not just show up, but show up over and over again, right?
Yeah.
Through the criticism, through the hate, through the doubters, just keep on doing it. Because at the end of the day, unless you're really hurting someone, you're doing good work. You're making progress. And over time, you're going to be surprised at how much progress and how much goodness will come your way.